Have you heard the one where I lived in Hoboken, New Jersey? Well, when I was 20 years old, I went to AMDA, American Music and Dramatic Academy. And that was like my trade school. And in doing so, I decided to live in Hoboken. That's where we stayed when I went to Joffrey, and I loved it. It was great. And I mean, even Hoboken says, why live in New York and have a view of Hoboken when you could live in Hoboken and have a view of New York? So that's what I did. I mean, I didn't have a view of New York. I lived in this basement apartment, which was like, those brownstones. And so you had to walk down, and it was windows, but it wasn't that light out. So I, tried to find a roommate, and I found this wonderful guy. His name was Mark Cabrera, and he was like a brother to me. So he was my roommate. He was like a wrestling coach and I think maybe a history teacher. I don't know. But like he worked with high school kids, and then he also was like a DJ at night. So that was like a typical like New Jersey thing. But like there was no funny business. He kept to himself. He had his own life. I had my own life. And he just was so, welcoming and, helpful because it was like a big brother. He dated a lot. And so there was always like, girls coming in. And I always thought it was hilarious because I, had short hair. And there would always be like hair scrunchies, and I could hear them like yelling at him, like, who's this hair scrunchie? And he would blame it on me. So I would always, come to the rescue. Yeah, oh yeah, that's my hair scrunchie. Yeah, those are all my toothbrushes. I would just, try to help him out. But, it was this railroad apartment in Hoboken, New Jersey, and it was like, you walked in, it was this door that locked from the inside and the outside. So I'm pretty sure that that was not good, like up to code. But then you'd walk through this like dark, dungeony, you know, hallway that goes all the way to the back where we had this, you know, little plot of space that was like surrounded by buildings, and you like just looked up at the sun, but you had outdoor space. So it was like, whoa. And from that hallway, you were able to get into the living room, which goes into his room, which goes into the kitchen, which goes into my room, which I had my separate entrance. So I never really went into his side of the house. It worked out really, really great. Two funny stories I could tell about living with Mark in Hoboken, New Jersey, is that we again had separate lives. So like I didn't use the kitchen. I really ate out. I mean, all the Italian food you could have in Hoboken. I mean, the pizza itself, Benny Tadino's, were like as big as your freaking head. It was amazing. So I remember I was getting ready to go to work, and I hear some banging and stuff, and I didn't think anything of it. I'm like, oh, he's probably just fixing something or doing something. And I go out the front door, I unlock the front door, go out and lock it behind me. And when I'm walking out, I see his door, the entrance to the living room. That's not the front door, but it's like his separate entrance from the dungeony hallway. And there's like a speaker propping up the door. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. He must be doing some sort of cleaning or some DJ thing. I don't know. So I go to work and I come back, and he actually calls me, I think at work, and he's like, we've been broken into. I'm like, what? This is like Hoboken. Nobody like does that. It's not like, I mean, it was really, just, there's people everywhere. It's like, come on. And it happened during the day. And I'm like, whoa. And so I rush home and I look at, nothing has been touched in my room. And he's like, yeah, we started talking. He's like, yeah, I could tell we got broken into because there was a speaker propping the door. And I'm like, wait, I was here for that. So all that banging around was somebody that broke into the house. And so like I was in the house with someone who broke in. I think, or we came to the conclusion that it might have been one of his high schoolers, like either just mad at him, making a scene or what have you. But luckily nothing major was stolen, and I wasn't hurt or, manhandled. But that was one interesting Hoboken story. Another one is, again, he was a DJ. He had lots of friends, and I mean, I had my friends too, but I remember sleeping, and all of a sudden I feel somebody sit on my bed. And I was able to get the light right there. So I turn the light on, and there's this handsome man sitting on my bed. But I look down, and he has no pants on or underwear. He's just sitting on my bed, butt naked. buck naked, whatever you want to say. And I go, can I help you? And he looks at me drunk as anything, looks at me and he's like, the light's bothering him. He stands up and it's like, there's his cheeks standing, staring at me. He's walking out and he turns to me and he goes, can you shut off the light? like, like I was inconveniencing him. So he had mistaken my room for the bathroom. So luckily nothing like transpired, but oh my gosh, when I told Mark the next day, his friend was still there. Didn't remember a thing, totally embarrassed. And so those are my fun stories. But yeah, Mark was amazing. He was just everything I needed in a roommate for this transition. Because I was 20 years old. Like, I didn't know nothing. And I was going to school full time and I got a job. And I cannot talk about Hoboken without discussing Johnny Rockets. Johnny Rockets was my main job, main income. And I remember when I was looking for apartments, I was looking for jobs as well. And Janelle, my friend that's from Texas, she was actually with me. And I go and like interview for this job. And it's like a 50s diner. There is singing and dancing on the hour. And I decided this is where I wanted to work. And I remember like Sharon, like she was my interviewer and she was the manager at that time. And like she wanted me to work. And I remember like she wanted me to come immediately. And I wasn't even moved in yet, I think. And I was like trying to please everybody at all times. That was kind of my personality. And so I remember that was really a point where Janelle's like, you need to find the bitch within. And I do remember that pivotal moment of being like, I can't work right now. I have to wait. And so like I knew that like standing up for myself, I could have lost a job, but I didn't. I ended up working there for like 9 years. And there was a brilliant cast of characters at this. This was like a meshed group. It's like, the show Friends, where everyone dates everybody. You only party with these people. Like, you don't really let anybody into your circle. That was Johnny Rockets. Most of my friend circle either came from Johnny Rockets or like a 6th degree of separation. So the boyfriends that I had, the best friends that came from that, it came from Johnny Rockets. The staff was just colorful. Even like the cookers that didn't speak any English, they were a hoot. They would call me, I don't know. It was like a name from, like, it was like, I think a Spanish bumblebee, a character that was really, really goofy. If you know what it is, just type it because I can't remember. And they would always just give me a hard time. Like I'd say thank you, and they'd say the nalgas, and I know that's butt cheeks, but like it was fun. I was actually pretty good at being a waitress. It became just muscle memory. So I actually won some awards, like Johnny Rockets awards, but I won a turkey one year. I didn't mind it. I didn't mind it as a job. The hours were hard. We would do the morning shift and then the evening shift, and in Hoboken, you're getting off at like 3 in the morning or so. And so it's like all just drunk people, constant drunk people. And some famous people from New York. And that was a hard thing. And I was also going through, health issues. And I remember, Dollar Bill, that's who we called the guy who owned it. He owned Hoboken's, Johnny Rockets. He owned Short Hills. He owned Atlantic City. And he owned these Johnny Rockets. And I worked for him doing some filing sometimes. I never was like a manager. I never really wanted to be. I just kind of worked. And I just, like, that was my mission in life, is to get insurance because I got an ulcer on my cornea. I, was having major endometriosis. Things were just really going south and I couldn't pay for it. I was in my 20s. I had no money. And he eventually did get insurance for everybody. I didn't get that. It happened, I think, year 10 and I was already gone. I did work for him in Atlantic City trying to open up that that was horrible, trying to open up Johnny Rockets. And he was like having us work hour after hour, hour after hour. And he like got us a hotel, and I was trying to like train the new staff in Atlantic City. And again, this is where standing up for myself kind of came in handy. I was learning these things. And I remember going to Bill, and I hadn't slept. And also I learned I do not do well with no sleep. Like that's, I mean, you can hear my voice right now. I'm having a little bit of an issue with like spring and everything. Oh, and I had spring break, so I don't have a lot of sleep right now. So in Atlantic City, I wasn't sleeping, and I'm trying to train these people. And I remember I go into Bill and I go, Bill, I know you thought that I was the right person for this, but I'm here to tell you that I'm not. And I remember how disappointed he was and how like stubborn I was. I'm like, I'm going home. I'm sorry. And I left him in a lurch. I totally left him high and dry. But I couldn't do it. It's like you figure out where your limits were. And that was my limit. There was so much that happened in Johnny Rockets. We would, again, there was a lot of enmeshed friendships, a lot of dating within the circle. We would go out at night, go to like this tiki bar where my roommate, who was the DJ, would, DJ and just staying up, just doing horrible things, over drinking, overdoing everything. And but it was formidable years. I remember I was at Johnny Rockets when I got the phone call or when I found out that my mother passed. And I remember being in that back area, falling to my knees and just being so broken. And I just remember taking all my money and just handing it to, I think it was Brendan at the time. Oops. See, I told you I was tired. That was my microphone. And I just handed them the money, and I'm like, I got to go. And of course, everybody, was so lovely and helpful. And it ended up being my boyfriend at the time's father passed away. Then my mother passed away, and then my closest friend Joanne's father passed away. And it was just this community of Johnny Rockets that kind of helped us get through these hard times. But there was good things about it too, and Bill had some good points to him as well. I remember 9/11. I remember being in my apartment. This was when I was living actually in Union City, and I was on the TV. I could not look at the TV, and I witnessed the second plane, and I was supposed to be at work. And Bill calls me. He's like, "Come!" Like you can't call it. Like all the phones were gone. You couldn't like get anybody. Somehow he got me, and he's like, "I'm coming to get you." I'm like, Bill, I'm not leaving the apartment. No way, I can't do it. Not doing it." And he's like, "I'm leaving now." I was like, "Oh my gosh!" He drives to my apartment in Union City, and he parks on the sidewalk, and he drags me out, and I go to work that day. And while we're driving, you're just seeing the smoke, and you're realizing this intense. It's just doom. It's doom and sadness. So I get there and it's chaos. And they got, instead of the 50s music, they've got the news on, just running and running and running. And everybody's emotional. But Bill was actually cooking food and sending it down to the pier where the boats were coming off of New York, out of New York, because all the subways were shut down. The only way people could get off of New York was through the ferries. So he was just sending Johnny Rockets food down there to feed the people. And people were coming in with still like debris and dust on them. And I remember, we're just feeding them. We're just feeding people. And that's all we could do. It's like I don't have these big stories about where I was, but I served some people some free hamburgers and fries, and we just tried to pull it together. So I always respected him for that, and the friendships that I made through Johnny Rockets and through the living of Hoboken, I still have today. So, and I think I met Josh through, it's like, I met my roommate who had a friend who was Elizabeth who, went on Match.com, and that's how I got on Match.com to meet Josh. So it's like 6 degrees of separation. And then people started, getting married, and we would go to their weddings, and we would do like one of our, Johnny Rockets dances. We'd do Love Shack, and it started to disperse. People were, starting to, make families for themselves. And we, would have these epic, I started like this epic birthday party where my birthday's near Halloween. And it was just this way to get dressed up and have like crazy times. And then my girl Joanne, who eventually was my roommate, we started having them together because her birthday was near Halloween too. And then we continued that. She's still having them, like these epic parties. We were known for our parties. And so it's interesting to see where their lives went and my lives went. Like, well, my life has gone. I don't speak to everyone anymore. I think of it, kind of like my Castle on the Hill song, by Ed Sheeran. It's like this pocket of time where it was everything that I needed and everything I didn't need. But that was my equivalent to my college years. And that was the equivalent of my coming into myself. And, realizing that now, I made a ton of mistakes and I made a ton of issues for myself. But I wouldn't change it for the world. And I think everybody else would agree with me that went through the Johnny Rockets monster.